I needed to feel like there was a point. I don't know how I don't know. Wrong. You'd think this would be an obvious one, but it's apparently not. Hi, I'm Madeline James, and today I wanted to walk you through 10 plot problems that I wish I had known about before I plotted and wrote my entire book so that I didn't have to go back and fix them now. So a couple months ago, after I finished my second draft of my novel, I sent it off to critique partners. And during that process, I also went through and started outlining another book. And to do that, I did a lot of research on different structures and writing craft, and I learned a lot. After I got my critique partner feedback back and went through and did a reread and mapped out all of my scene analysis over the Camp NaNoWriMo last month, I found so many problems. I thought I would walk you through some of these problems and maybe save you a little bit of pain and suffering. My first problem is not being aware of structure. So I know there is no correct structure. I'm realizing that it's really important to actually understand some of these common structures, understand what's expected, why these things work, what purpose they have, so that you kind of understand them at a deeper level and can go through and figure out what structure would work best for your project. These are my favorite resources right now for structure. I'll also put all the links below, and if you have other favorites, I would love for you to let me know in the comments because I am still very much looking forward to learning more. Number 2, not including an inner and outer journey for all my POVs. So 2 of my POVs did not really have an inner journey. They had a little bit of internal conflict, like they had a fatal flaw or misbelief, but it didn't tie into their story, and their story in the first book didn't really involve much interaction with this inner conflict. Now, these POVs were also 2 of the more, major POVs in my story, and the feedback I got from my critique partners indicated pretty strongly that these were their least 2 favorite POVs when I felt like they should have been the favorites. But the other 2 POVs had these really deep inner conflicts that intertwined with their external journeys, and it was a lot more relatable, a lot more moving. They cared a lot more about these characters. So I obviously need to make sure that I'm going through and really defining these inner journeys for these other 2 POVs and making sure that that is very apparent and kind of intertwined with the outer journey. Number 3 is not having clear goals and agency for my POVs. So I've realized that it's really important to make it very obvious what the goals of your POVs are, because they need to be working for something. They need to be, actively trying to accomplish some sort of goal, and these goals should be a reflection of their inner journey and where they are in that process. So my rough plan for the goals for all of these is to have at least 4 different goals, right? So you have your before the break into 2, the first half of Act 2 leading up to the midpoint to the break into 3, and then the break into 3 through to the end of the climax. And each of those goals kind of shows that correlation between the inner and the outer journey and where they are along that. So, from the beginning of the book up to the midpoint, that's going to be the main character, the POV character, going after what they want or what they think they want. And they're going about it in a way where, they clearly still are holding to their misbelief. And then after the midpoint, that kind of shifts. Maybe they have, they know what they need, right? And they're going after that. But it isn't until that break into 3 that they're actually going to be able to overcome that misbelief. So I really like looking at it like that and really mapping out each of those, and that's really helping me fix this plot problem. Number 4, bland subplots. A lot of my subplots were not structured properly. They're just sort of things that I intuitively put in there. There was nothing intentional about them, and you can really, really tell. They don't add any sort of concrete purpose to the story. They don't necessarily tie in correctly. They don't have a satisfying arc with its own conflicts and tension. And some of them I have subplots, like relationship subplots, that have the exact same purpose to the main character's story, which is a waste of scenes. So I'm going to be tightening that up. I'm re-outlining and replotting all of the subplots that I want to keep in there, making sure they have a proper arc, making sure they have conflict and tension, and making sure they're actually purposeful and they add something to the main story that I'm trying to tell. Number 5 is plot holes and dangling plot points. I'm not a pantser, so I think some of these got introduced as, I just had this idea of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this happened, and then I did something with it later and then, of course, forgot about it. But in general, I don't think I really understood this idea that when you set up expectations to the reader, you need to follow through on them. Like if a character says something which implies that this is going to become a thing later on, or a problem or a conflict or something, you need to do something about it. And I didn't realize that before, and I found a lot of those when I was going back through and reading, and I need to decide which ones I'm actually going to follow through on and which ones I'm going to take out. Number 6, side characters with no purpose or a shared purpose. This is sort of similar to those bland subplots where I have characters that I just put in there because it made sense for them to be in there based off the world, but they didn't actually add anything, they just took up space. I'm really going through all of these side characters I have and judging whether or not they really need to be there, and if they don't and they don't add anything, I'm keeping them as minimal and unobtrusive as possible. And then for some characters that are kind of fulfilling the same purpose, like they're both providing the same conflict in the same way for the same character, I'm just combining them. So that'll save me a lot of words and have everything that is in there be a lot more intentional. Number 7. A poorly done mystery. This one makes me so sad. So one of my POV characters, her main external journey is a mystery plotline, and that mystery is sort of what ties everything together at the end and explains what was happening and how all their plotlines were really combined, and also sets up what's going to happen in future books. So it is really critical, and I did an awful job at it. So I have a whole list of things that I did wrong and things I want to fix, and I'm probably going to do a separate video on exactly how I'm re-outlining and fixing this mystery. I will say my biggest inspiration here was Alexa Dunn's video on plotting a thriller backwards. Just hearing how she talks about it alone and the things that are important really made it click for me of what I was really missing. Just to go over like a quick list of some of the things that are wrong with this mystery plotline. It is too linear. There aren't a ton of different threads of inquiry that kind of, blend together. It's all just this, then this, then this, then this, then oh, that's the end. Bad. My main character, POV character, never actually solves the mystery themselves. They kind of are just like wrong, 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 and then it's revealed, but they didn't figure it out themselves. I don't know how I don't know. But yep, I'm fixing that. The victim themselves is uninteresting and does not matter. It basically, I could replace them with anyone and makes no difference. And that's another thing that I really got from Alexa Dunn's video, is that you really want your victim to be interesting, because if they're going to be investigating that person's life and why they were killed, the reader needs to empathize with them and really needs to care, and there needs to be intrigue with that, and different clues and secrets that can be unveiled and stuff like that. Next one is there's no satisfying conclusion, and that is partially because the POV character never discovers it, but it's sort of like, even if they hadn't been investigating the mystery, the same outcome would have happened. And I do need this mystery to sort of end with the baddie getting away with it, but I need it to feel like there was a point to her looking into it, that there's a reason that she spent all this time and effort and went through all of this danger, and there needs to be something that she's succeeded on. So I know how I'm going to fix that one. And then I need multiple reasonable suspects and lines of inquiry. You'd think this would be an obvious one, but it's apparently not. So those are all things I'm going to be fixing for my mystery plot, which is going to probably change the most. Number 8, lack of conflict. I think this is a pretty common saggy middle sort of problem, especially once you are in that zone of like midpoint through to the break into 3, that sort of area. And in my book, my midpoint was also really early, so this is basically the entire middle of the book was just kind of lacking conflict for a few of the POV characters, which is a big problem. The big second half of Act 2 was really just a series of moments, a sequence of events, things that it made sense to happen, but nothing came out of them happening. It's like you sort of got a recap of, oh, these are all these things that would have happened, and then we're going to get back into the main character having agency, having purpose, actually doing something, succeeding, failing, conflict, tension. We're going to fix all that. Number 9, pacing. Partially due to my complete lack of structural knowledge and how pacing is supposed to work when I first outlined and plotted this book, I got some issues. Most of this is just due to the timing of when things happened and some of the sequencing of events, like having too much action close together and then having too much like reflection and slower scenes together. But in general, this is just going to be fixed by me actually plotting out in a structure that has momentum, all the different plot lines and making sure they work together, and then just making sure I don't have too many scenes that have the same amounts of tension and the same, I guess, internal pacing next to each other. Number 10, not knowing how to structure a scene. When I read Story Genius and I was going through the scene cards that they have, and I started thinking about that and for, outlining that next book that I was working on, I just had this thought of none of my scenes in my Blood Magic project are going to be like this. Like, I had never thought about it like that, about this cause and effect, this having your own mini arc within a scene. I just never occurred to me, ever. And when I went back through and was analyzing all the scenes that existed in my book and sort of reverse outlining, I guess, there was maybe 1 in 3, 1 in 4 that was good, right? Was correct, but there was a lot that weren't. I really like this idea that, you have this happens, but there's this conflict and therefore this. And I think that comes from screenwriting stuff, but like just that cause and effect path is so important. And Story Genius breaks this down really, really well, in my opinion, where you have both the external and the internal journey and a cause and effect for each of them. So something happens externally, and then there's a consequence externally, and then there is I think it's like a realization internally due to what happens, and then, and so how does this change how they're feeling internally about stuff? I highly recommend that book, by the way, if you're curious, but I'm going to have to go through, and once I have the general plot lines fixed, I'm going to make sure all of my scenes are actually gonna be structured properly. So I'm sure I have a lot of other little issues that I found that I'm fixing, but these are all the sort of overarching plot level ones that I found in my book that I'm going to be fixing in this. And, I really hope that you can avoid these problems. Craft books are amazing. Learning is amazing. I don't know. You'd think that if you read a lot, you'd kind of notice these patterns, and I guess I did to an extent, but really going through craft books and structure, if that's a good way for you to learn, is so helpful in my opinion, or at least taking the time to actually analyzing stories out there and just kind of understanding what puts them together. Yeah, I'm going to be continuing to vlog my re-outlining process, which you can sort of see the starts of up here. But yeah, I think that's all I have right now. If there are any huge issues that you found going through like developmental edits and big structural edits of your books and you want to share them below, I would love to hear about them. But I'll see you next time.